Your arteries could be quietly narrowing right now, and you might feel absolutely nothing. That silence is exactly what makes this the most overlooked threat for people over 45. Most people believe that if something serious were happening inside their body, they would know it. They'd feel sharp pain or get a clear warning. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Artery blockage doesn't announce itself like a broken bone or a bad cold. It builds slowly, quietly, over years. And by the time many people realize something is wrong, the situation has already gone further than it needed to. The good news? There are early signals your body sends out, subtle ones that most people miss, dismiss, or simply never connect to their heart and arteries. Today, we're going to change that. You've probably had a moment, maybe getting up from your favorite chair and feeling a little more winded than usual. Or you've noticed your feet feel strangely cold even on a warm evening. Maybe you've chalked up some occasional dizziness to just getting older. You told yourself it was nothing serious. Maybe you even laughed it off with a friend. That's incredibly common. Most people over 45 do exactly that. But what if your body was actually trying to tell you something important, and you just didn't have the right information to understand the message? Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to walk through 5 specific signals that your body may already be showing you. Signals that, when understood properly, can point to the early stages of reduced blood flow through your arteries. We'll talk about what's actually happening inside your blood vessels in a way that makes total sense without any complicated medical language. And then, and this is the part many people don't expect, we're going to talk about garlic. Not as a miracle cure, not as a replacement for your doctor, but as a genuinely well-studied, natural food that has real, documented benefits for your cardiovascular system. We'll cover exactly how it works and how to use it wisely as part of your daily life. By the time we reach the end of this video, you're going to feel more connected to your own body than you did when you pressed play. You'll be able to recognize signals that you might have previously ignored. You'll understand something practical you can start doing or eating this week. And most importantly, you're going to leave this conversation feeling informed and empowered, not scared. So stay with me. Every section of what follows is worth your time. Let's start with a simple picture. Imagine a garden hose. When that hose is clean and flexible, water flows through it freely, with good pressure, reaching every corner of your garden. Now imagine that over time, a sticky residue starts to build up on the inside walls of that hose. It builds slowly. So slowly that you don't notice it day by day. But gradually, the opening inside that hose gets narrower. The water pressure on the other side drops, and the parts of your garden farthest from the source start getting less water than they need. That is essentially what happens inside your arteries when something called plaque begins to accumulate. Plaque is a mixture of cholesterol, calcium, and other substances that can slowly deposit along the inner walls of your blood vessels. As those deposits build, the passage for blood to flow becomes narrower. And when blood flow is reduced, tissues and organs throughout your body receive less oxygen and fewer nutrients than they need to function at their best. Now here's something incredibly important to understand. This process, the gradual buildup of plaque inside arterial walls, is called atherosclerosis, and it often begins silently, completely silently. In fact, it can begin in your 30s and 40s and progress for years before it produces any obvious symptoms. Which is why, after the age of 45, paying attention to your body's subtle signals becomes so critically valuable. Your body is a remarkable communicator. It rarely goes completely silent when something is changing. Instead, it sends small, easy-to-overlook messages. Let's look at 5 of those messages together. Here's something that might surprise you. Research shows that people who become aware of these early signals and who take even modest steps in response can significantly slow the progression of arterial narrowing. This isn't a situation where you're powerless. Awareness alone is already a form of action, and you're already taking that action right now by being here. Signal 1. There's a difference between being tired and experiencing the kind of fatigue that comes from reduced blood flow. Ordinary tiredness makes sense. You had a long day, you didn't sleep well, you pushed yourself physically. You know why you're tired, and after some rest, you bounce back. But the fatigue connected to poor arterial circulation has a different quality. it tends to show up even after a full night's sleep. It's a heaviness, a feeling that your energy simply isn't restoring itself the way it used to. Some people describe it as feeling like they're running on empty, no matter what they do. Others notice that activities they used to handle easily, walking to the mailbox, cooking a full meal, going up a flight of stairs, now leave them feeling disproportionately drained. This happens because when blood flow is reduced, the heart has to work harder to push blood through narrower pathways, and the organs and muscles receiving that blood aren't getting their full supply of oxygen. Think of it like trying to run a busy household on a generator that's only working at 60% capacity. The lights flicker, appliances strain. Everything feels like it takes more effort than it should. Now, fatigue has many causes. Thyroid changes, sleep disruptions, anemia, and other factors can all contribute. That's why this signal on its own doesn't confirm anything. But when it appears alongside some of the other signals we're about to discuss, it becomes a meaningful piece of the picture. Before we move to the second signal, I want to pause and ask you something. Have you had mornings where you woke up after what felt like a decent sleep and still felt completely unrested? Where getting started with your day felt like pushing through something heavy? If that sounds familiar, stay with me, because by the time we cover all 5 signals, you may start connecting some dots you hadn't connected before. Signal 2. Your hands and feet are the farthest points from your heart. They're at the very end of the line when it comes to blood circulation. So when blood flow is compromised, when the passages carrying blood are narrower than they should be, the extremities are often the first places to show the effects. Cold hands and feet are extremely common, especially in women over 45. And yes, hormonal changes can contribute to temperature sensitivity. But there's a particular pattern worth noticing. When poor circulation is involved, the coldness tends to persist even in warm environments. You might be sitting in a comfortably heated room in the middle of summer, and your feet still feel like they've been in the refrigerator. Socks help temporarily, but the cold keeps returning. Warming them under a blanket gives some relief, but not the lasting warmth you'd expect. Additionally, some people notice that their hands or feet don't just feel cold, they also look a little different. They may appear slightly pale, or take on a faintly bluish tinge at the fingertips or toes. This discoloration, even when mild, is worth paying attention to. It's your body giving you a visual signal that blood isn't reaching that area as efficiently as it should. Again, cold extremities alone can be explained by many things, but in combination with other signals, it becomes increasingly significant. Signal 3. This one tends to catch people off guard because it sneaks up gradually. You don't suddenly find yourself breathless after a light walk. It happens progressively, so progressively that many people don't even realize how much their tolerance has changed over time. Think about this honestly. A year or two ago, could you climb a full flight of stairs without needing a moment to catch your breath at the top? Could you walk at a comfortable pace through a grocery store without feeling a need to slow down or rest? If the answer to those questions has shifted, if activities that were once easy now leave you noticeably breathless, that change deserves attention. When arteries are narrowed and blood flow is reduced, the heart works harder. Over time, this extra effort can reduce the heart's ability to efficiently supply oxygen to the lungs and muscles during any kind of physical exertion. Even moderate activity, things that aren't strenuous by most measures, can produce a breathless feeling that seems out of proportion to what you're actually doing. One helpful way to assess this at home is what some doctors call the conversation test. If you're walking at a comfortable pace and you can carry on a normal conversation without struggling, that's generally a good sign. If you find yourself needing to pause mid-sentence to take a breath, that's worth noting and worth mentioning to your doctor. I'd love to pause here for a moment and ask you directly. Have any of these first 3 signals resonated with you personally? Maybe not all of them, but perhaps 1 or 2. If so, I want you to write it down in the comments below. Just say, I noticed signal 1, or signal 3 is familiar to me. Not because I'm trying to diagnose anyone, I'm absolutely not, but because putting it into words is a powerful first step toward taking that signal seriously. And it helps me understand what topics matter most to this community, so I can keep creating content that's genuinely useful to you. Signal 4. Most people have experienced the brief head rush that happens when you stand up too quickly. You get up from the couch, and for just a second, the room tilts slightly. Then it passes, and you carry on. That fleeting sensation, experienced occasionally, is usually a simple matter of blood pressure adjusting to the position change, and it's generally harmless. But there's a version of this that goes a step further, and it's worth distinguishing between the two. If you're noticing dizziness that doesn't fully clear within a few seconds, or if it's happening more frequently than before, or if it's accompanied by a brief feeling of disorientation or foggy thinking, that's a different conversation. When the carotid arteries, the large blood vessels running along either side of your neck that supply blood directly to your brain, experience any degree of narrowing, the brain can receive slightly less blood flow than it needs during moments of transition, like standing up, turning your head quickly, or even reaching upward. The result can be a lightheadedness that feels a little more substantial than the ordinary head rush. This is one of those signals that people almost universally dismiss as just getting older. And while it's true that balance and circulation do shift with age, that doesn't mean every signal should be accepted without question. Your body is giving you information. The question is whether you're listening to it. Signal 5. This fifth signal is the one that tends to get the most attention, and rightfully so, but it's also the one that gets misinterpreted most often. Many people assume that chest pressure related to the heart must be dramatic and obvious, like the scenes depicted in movies. In reality, for many people, especially for women over 45, the sensation can be surprisingly subtle. It might feel like someone is gently pressing on the center of your chest during a brisk walk. It might feel like an odd heaviness in your left arm or shoulder that appears when you're exerting yourself and disappears when you rest. Some people describe it as a sense of tightness, like a mild squeezing, that comes on during activity and eases when they stop and sit down. The technical term for this pattern is angina, which simply means the heart muscle is temporarily receiving less oxygen than it needs during exertion, due to narrowed arteries limiting blood flow. It is not necessarily a heart attack. It is a signal, and it is one that should never be ignored or explained away as indigestion or muscle tension without a proper evaluation. If you ever experience chest pressure that comes on during physical activity and relieves with rest, or worse, that occurs even at rest, please make an appointment with your doctor promptly. This is the one signal on our list that warrants the most urgent attention. Here's something I want you to hold on to as we move into the next part of our conversation. Every single signal we just discussed represents your body doing its job. Your body is communicating. It is asking for attention and care. And the fact that these signals exist, that they appear before something more serious happens, means that you have a window, a genuine, meaningful window to respond. The path forward isn't about fear. It's about informed action. And one of the most fascinating, well-studied, and accessible forms of informed action available to you sits in the produce aisle at your local grocery store. It's small, it's humble, it's incredibly pungent, and it's been supporting cardiovascular health in human beings for thousands of years. Let's talk about garlic. What garlic actually does inside your body. Garlic, Allium sativum if you want the scientific name, has been used medicinally for over 5,000 years across cultures from ancient Egypt to traditional Chinese medicine to Mediterranean healing practices. But what modern research has done is begin to explain why it works. The key lies in a compound called allicin. When you crush or chop a raw garlic clove, the cell walls break open, and two substances inside the clove combine to form allicin. This compound is responsible for garlic's sharp smell, and also for a significant portion of its cardiovascular benefits. Here's what the research tells us in plain language. Allicin has been shown to help reduce LDL cholesterol. That's the type often referred to as bad cholesterol, the same type that contributes most to plaque buildup inside arterial walls. In multiple clinical studies, regular garlic consumption has been associated with modest but meaningful reductions in total cholesterol levels. For someone whose levels are elevated, even a 10 to 15% reduction can make a real difference over time. But garlic doesn't stop there. It also has documented effects on blood pressure. High blood pressure. hypertension, is one of the most significant contributors to accelerated plaque formation and arterial damage. When blood flows through your vessels at higher pressure than normal, it gradually damages the inner lining of those vessel walls, making them more vulnerable to plaque accumulation. Garlic's active compounds have been shown in multiple studies to help relax and widen blood vessels, which allows blood to flow with less resistance, effectively reducing pressure. Think of it this way. If our earlier garden hose was made of a more flexible, supple material, the water would flow through it more easily, with less strain on the walls of the hose. Garlic helps keep your vessel walls more supple and responsive. Garlic's effect on blood thickness and inflammation. There are two more mechanisms worth understanding because they're often overlooked in popular discussions about garlic. The first is blood viscosity, which simply means how thick your blood is. Blood that flows too thickly or tends to clump together can form small clots that contribute to blockages. Garlic has compounds, including one called ajoine, that help reduce the tendency of blood platelets to clump together unnecessarily. This keeps blood flowing more smoothly through your vessels, reducing the risk of dangerous clots forming where narrowing has already occurred. The second mechanism is inflammation. Chronic, low-grade inflammation inside blood vessels is now understood by cardiologists to be one of the primary drivers of plaque buildup and arterial disease. It's not the only factor, but it's a significant one. Garlic contains potent antioxidant compounds that help reduce this internal inflammation, almost like a gentle, ongoing calming effect on the inner environment of your blood vessels. To put all of this together practically, garlic helps on 4 fronts simultaneously. It helps manage cholesterol. It helps lower blood pressure. It helps keep blood flowing smoothly, and it helps reduce the internal inflammation that accelerates plaque formation. For a humble little bulb, that's a remarkable profile. How to use garlic the right way for maximum benefit. Now, knowing that garlic is beneficial is one thing. Knowing how to use it effectively is equally important, because not all forms of garlic are equal, and there are some simple practices that make a real difference. Let's start with raw, fresh garlic. This is the most potent form for cardiovascular benefits, because the allicin content is highest when the clove is freshly crushed or chopped and consumed relatively quickly. The trick is this. After you crush or finely chop your garlic, let it sit for about 10 minutes before using it. This waiting period allows the chemical reaction that produces allicin to fully complete. If you throw garlic straight into a hot pan the moment you chop it, you interrupt that process and lose a significant portion of the benefit. A practical way many people incorporate raw garlic is by adding a finely minced clove to salad dressings, spreading it on whole grain toast with a little olive oil, or stirring it into a bowl of soup just before eating, not while cooking. The gentle heat of the soup won't destroy the compounds the way prolonged cooking would. For those who find raw garlic too strong on the stomach or the palate, aged garlic extract is a well-researched alternative. It has undergone an aging process that makes it odorless and gentler on digestion, while preserving many of its cardiovascular compounds. Several clinical trials specifically on aged garlic extract have shown promising results for blood pressure reduction and arterial flexibility. Garlic supplements in capsule form are also widely available, and while they can be convenient, quality varies significantly between brands. If you're considering a supplement, look for products that specify allicin yield or standardized allicin content on the label, and speak with your doctor or pharmacist before adding any new supplement to your routine. As a general guideline supported by research, 1 to 2 raw cloves per day provides a meaningful cardiovascular dose for most healthy adults. More than that doesn't necessarily mean more benefit and can occasionally cause digestive discomfort. Garlic is genuinely powerful on its own, but it works best as part of a broader approach to arterial health. And there are a few natural companions that amplify its effects in ways that are worth knowing about. Olive oil is one of the most studied. The Mediterranean diet, which features both garlic and olive oil prominently, has decades of research supporting its cardiovascular benefits. The healthy monounsaturated fats in extra virgin olive oil have their own cholesterol balancing and anti-inflammatory effects. When you combine these with garlic, You get a culinary duo that has been serving the hearts of Mediterranean populations for generations. Turmeric is another compelling companion. Its active compound, curcumin, is one of the most extensively studied anti-inflammatory agents in nutrition science. Used together, garlic and turmeric in cooking or as separate additions to food, they create a compounding anti-inflammatory effect that benefits the inner walls of blood vessels. And then there's the often underestimated power of consistent hydration. Water isn't a supplement or a spice, but it plays a critical role in blood viscosity. Blood that is well hydrated flows more efficiently. Many people over 45 don't drink nearly as much water as their body needs, particularly because the sensation of thirst diminishes with age. Making a conscious effort to stay well hydrated throughout the day supports everything else you do for your cardiovascular system. Let's be honest about something. Garlic is not a magic solution that cancels out other lifestyle factors. No single food is, but it can be a meaningful and accessible part of a larger picture that, when combined thoughtfully, produces real results. Movement matters enormously for arterial health. And before you think exercise, I want to reframe that word for a moment. For people over 45, the research consistently supports the benefit of consistent, moderate movement. Not marathon training, not gym sessions 5 days a week, unless that's your preference. Walking is genuinely one of the best things you can do for your cardiovascular system. A brisk 30-minute walk most days of the week, a pace where you're slightly warmer and breathing a little more noticeably than usual, has been shown in study after study to reduce blood pressure, improve cholesterol profiles, reduce inflammation, and support healthy arterial function. Sleep is the other factor that rarely gets the recognition it deserves in cardiovascular conversations. During deep sleep, your body repairs vascular tissues, regulates inflammatory processes, and allows blood pressure to drop to its natural resting levels. Chronic poor sleep, fewer than 6 hours consistently, or sleep that is frequently interrupted, has been linked to accelerated plaque formation and higher rates of cardiovascular events. If your sleep is struggling, that's worth addressing as much as anything else we've discussed today. And stress management, while it may sound like a soft topic, has very real physiological effects on your arteries. Chronic stress raises cortisol levels. Elevated cortisol over time raises blood pressure, increases inflammation, and contributes to the kind of internal environment where plaque thrives. Practices like gentle yoga, breathing exercises, time in nature, or even just deliberately quiet time each day are not luxuries for people over 45. They are cardiovascular medicine. Everything we've covered today is educational and empowering, but none of it replaces a conversation with your personal physician. In fact, I hope this conversation motivates you to have a more informed, more specific conversation with your doctor than you might have had before. If any of the 5 signals we discussed resonate with you, the persistent fatigue, the cold extremities, the unexplained breathlessness, the dizziness, or the chest or arm pressure during activity, bring those observations to your doctor's attention specifically. Don't assume they'll come up on their own. Mention them directly. Ask your doctor to check your lipid panel. That's a blood test that shows your cholesterol levels, including HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. Ask about your blood pressure trends over time, not just the single reading taken in the office. Ask whether a cardiovascular risk assessment makes sense for you, given your age and any family history. And if you're interested in incorporating garlic more intentionally into your diet, mention that too. Most physicians are genuinely supportive of food-based approaches, especially when they complement rather than replace conventional care. The only area to be mindful of is if you're taking blood-thinning medications. Garlic's mild blood-thinning properties mean it's worth checking with your doctor before significantly increasing your intake in that context. The body that brought you here can carry you further. Let's end the main content of today's conversation with this thought. Every single person watching this video has a body that has carried them through decades of living. Through challenges, through changes, through everything life has offered. That same body, given the right attention and the right support, is capable of remarkable adaptation and resilience. Arterial health is not a fixed destiny. The research on lifestyle-based cardiovascular intervention is genuinely encouraging. People who become aware, who make consistent and thoughtful changes, who work with their doctors and pay attention to what their bodies are communicating, those people change their trajectory. Not perfectly, not overnight, but meaningfully and measurably. You are not too old to make a difference. Garlic on your breakfast toast, a walk after dinner, a glass of water instead of reaching for something else, a good night's sleep, a meaningful conversation with your doctor. These things matter. They add up, and you matter enough for them to be worth doing. Now I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, I want you to share one thing, just one, that you're going to do differently after watching this video today. Maybe it's adding garlic to something you cook this week. Maybe it's booking that doctor's appointment you've been putting off. Maybe it's committing to a short walk tomorrow morning. Whatever it is, write it down in the comments. Putting it into words makes it more real. And reading each other's commitments in the comment section has a wonderful way of creating a community of accountability and encouragement. I genuinely read your comments, and they guide the topics I create next. So let me hear from you. Before we wrap up, a quick and important note. Everything shared in this video is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it is not intended to replace the guidance of your personal physician. Every body is unique. Every health history is different, and the right steps for you personally are best determined in conversation with a healthcare provider who knows your full picture. Please use what you've learned here to have better, more informed conversations with your doctor, not to make medical decisions on your own. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It means a great deal that you chose to invest in your own health and awareness by watching all the way through. You showed up for yourself today, and that's never a small thing. Take good care of that remarkable body of yours. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember, feeling well after 45 is not just possible, it is absolutely within your reach. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.